Come up with something that's interesting to you, that's worth exploring. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to change the world, but make sure it's something you like, you're interested in, and then don't cop out halfway through it and go, I changed my mind.
Joshua Kemble, an indie t-shirt designer, as well as an illustrator, graphic designer, art director, has always been making comics on the side. And what would you say to these students that have discovered that they would like to do these personal projects, but they don't know where to start or what to do?
Like, I kept waiting for a good chunk of my life for someone to give me permission to do the thing I always wanted to do, which for me was comics. Or I'd wait for like inspiration. I was waiting for some magic or something to happen, or like waiting till I acquired the skills. And I realized, like, I'm going to be in this eternal waiting room. What I need to do is just do the thing. And then that's how you do it. And I, oddly enough, the second I realized that, I suddenly started having things happen in the industry. You can't wait for a college professor to suddenly hand you the golden key. You can't wait for an art director to suddenly hand you the golden key. There is no golden key. Like, and there's a million doorways, and the only way you find out what happens is by putting your money where your mouth is and just not waiting. It's just doing the thing. The people we all admire, the reason we admire them as artists is they did the thing.
I'm ready to go. How do I pick what I do?
I know there's variety of theories on this and stuff. I tend to be of the mind of pick what is most interesting and important to you. If you want to make a great thing, give it your best shot. A half done, half baked, horrible project is better than a talked about idea that never happens. So for me, it's like pick something, start and finish. That's what it comes down to. And I know it can be intimidating. I think my first comic was pretty cliche in retrospect because I was an art student writing what I felt was a profound story about writer's block. You know, like that was the theme, was like, I'm so sad because I don't know what to write. Which now that I'm older, I realize that's a pretty standard kind of plot. However, you don't need, again, kind of like the magic thing. There's no magic, right? Pick a thing. The things we all like a lot of the biggest like cultural things that are out there are kind of ridiculous premises. Like if you think about like Star Wars, it's kind of a silly premise. If you think about Jurassic Park, it's kind of, I'm wearing a Jurassic Park shirt. It's kind of a silly premise, right? The thing is, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the perfect concept. What's more important than perfect is actually just doing. Come up with something that's interesting to you, that's worth exploring. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to change the world. But make sure it's something you like, you're interested in, and then don't cop out halfway through it and go, I changed my mind. That's where people fall into pitfalls as artists. Like, start something, finish it, and the process of doing that, of doing what you say you're going to do, is going to set self-discipline and kind of set up like a standard for yourself that you can follow for the rest of your life. If you become the type of person who starts something and finishes, then you'll become the college student who graduates. You'll be the person who gets a job and doesn't get discouraged when you're, submitting applications. You'll be a person in relationships who's reliable. It's a really good habit, but for creatives, it's essential, because if you become the creative who starts everything and never finishes, that can become a cycle, right? All of our actions can become addictions. And so if that's true, then start actions that could be positive addictions. Like doing what you say you're going to do is a good addiction to have. What's a thing you want to see in the world that isn't out there? Like, what's an idea you have that you feel like, man, that should be a thing. That should be a movie. Well, like maybe you went to see a movie yesterday in the theater and you were like, that was cool, but wouldn't it have been cooler if, like, those kind of thoughts like are creative fodder to kind of build off of. And I think kind of similar to be a person who does what you say you're going to do, right? Also be a creative who follows those creative promptings, like that is your muse, is the brain part of you that's like, man, I like when people wear this certain type of shirt. I think that looks really cool, right? That's a creative thought. Like that could be your character design, right? Like of like people who wear cool shirts, like um or I get disturbed when things are politically happening around in this certain way. Well, there's a plot, there's a story. I mean, think about like Brave New World in 1984. They're all built on like political frustration of the authors, right? And like a fantasy built on that. I don't, it could be anything. Like hedgehogs are cool. Okay, write a story about hedgehogs, right? And like get into it. Why are they cool? Start answering whys. Like be curious, follow your curiosity, and then again, once you set up doing something, don't allow yourself a cop out. Think of it as a marathon you're signing up for, and you don't want to be the person who's like telling everybody, I'm running the LA marathon, I'm doing it tomorrow. And then you start and you get like 3 steps in and you're like, never mind, I'm not a marathon runner. No, no, no. Even if you're not a runner or you're not a creative yet, like be the type of person who starts a big project or a small project and gets it done.
A lot of students are taking multiple classes. They might have a part-time job. Some of them have families, young families and things. And they're wondering, how do you find the time to do any of this stuff? Like, how do I add a personal project to everything else that I've got going on? I'm so busy.
I would say I used to have that thought when I was in college. The thing that you're going to hear a lot from people my age and who've been in your circumstances, you will never have more free time than you have right now when you're in college. So if you feel like you're busy, great. It will only get busier. And the cool thing is, if you start doing projects and you start succeeding at that, you will be creating a life of being too busy. And that's a good life to have, right? That's a life where you're making things of value. You're putting good things out in the world instead of filling junk piles. And you're not being a consumer, you're being a producer, which I think is a much better healthier like way to live. There's a lot of statistics of men especially, but women as well, but mostly older men when they retire go through like massive depression because they don't know what to do with themselves. Work was how I identified who I was, and my identity was so wrapped up in work. Now that I don't have to work, what is my identity? The great thing about creatives is I don't think we're going to have that problem. I think as long as we have functional hands, any time given to us is like a deposit in a bank. It's a reward. Your project should not be up for debate. Word is bond is an old way of saying that. But it's like, it's true. Your word is your bond. If you're committing to something, commit to it, and often these are going to be not giant projects, like smaller projects. So committing and finishing is huge. Don't allow yourself to cheat. If you negotiate, then you're setting up a bad habit that could potentially be something you do for the rest of your life, where you make excuses for not doing the thing you're supposed to do. A schedule is essential for creative projects because creative projects will eat time, and they will take time. And the only way they get done is if you carve out slices of time on a daily basis to kind of make progress. Back planning, like thinking ahead and thinking like, okay, here's my end result that I want. What do I need to do weekly or daily in order to kind of advance to that goal and make my deadline? That's going to be fundamental, and you want to keep track of it. However, with a schedule, you also need to be slightly forgiving in the sense that there will be hiccups, and there are going to be days where you may not be able to get to your project, or there might be days where you're like, I'm going to carve out an hour for my project and it's really exciting, and you spend 6 hours. Make sure you schedule, make sure you think about times of day. What times of day are best for you? Think about windows. What's the window when you get home and you play a video game? Or the window when you make time to watch like The Mandalorian or whatever it is? That's your time. That's the time. Instead of doing that, you should be doing the thing that you're supposed to do.
A lot of people start like a challenge, whether it be like the 100 days or a sticker stand or whatever. Like they'll do a challenge and they like miss a day and then just quit forever.
It's like exercise. Exercise is the same kind of thing. You need to be pretty rigid and hard on yourself in the sense of like self-discipline to do it, but also don't be the self-fulfilling prophecy of like, well, I missed a day, so therefore I've failed the whole thing. If you do that, you will never get in a solid routine of exercise or anything like really significant, you know. um I, Art is a marriage, right? And in a marriage, like you're going to have days where things aren't perfect and you screw up, but you don't basically just go because there's one bad day in a marriage like, well, the whole thing's screwed, you know. Like it's it's a work in progress, and it requires like kind of active participation and also a little bit of self forgiveness because you're human, you know. Especially in college, you're going to have weird things happen, maybe relatives die, things like that. There are things that are more important than college sometimes, you know. And that's okay. That's kind of part of being human. College students are usually going to be on one end or the other where you're not spending enough time, or you're the college student who is like so obsessed and so hard on yourself that it's okay to be human and frail, right?
What do you think about dedicating a space to being productive?
That book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and he talks about this a lot. I think that it's going to be individual for each person. When I'm working on comics or personal work, I'm working on my desktop, right? When I work at on things for teaching, or for right now, I'm also attending college again. So if I'm doing homework or setting up lesson plans and stuff like that, I do that on my laptop. I'm not saying you guys will have two computers. It's just for me that helps me not get cognitive overload. Like I'm able to kind of split my kind of more creative side with my more student technical absorption side, right? Like it's like two different things. I used to live in like a really bad area of Long Beach in what was called a studio apartment, but it was kind of like a closet. But I still made a section of there with my art table, which is a ridiculously big drafting table that I inherited. And I would fit that in there. I would make a way. If I didn't have space for that, I would still have a spot that's your art spot or your creative spot. And it doesn't even have to be like a perfect area. It could literally be like I have a chair by a window and that's where I'm going to be, or it could be I'm in the beanbag chair in the corner, right? Whatever it is. But the reason that it's important to set up a space is you eliminate excuses. So setting up a space allows you to sit down. When you have a 10-minute window, you can sit down and get work done. You don't have to spend unnecessary time like setting up and making the environment right and stuff like that, because a lot of artists can get stuck in that routine where you're cleaning and making space and setting things up. Set it up to where it's something that even if you have to take it down, it's like a quick setup, a quick takedown, so that it's like a rigid thing. I don't know, maybe the space is the corner of your bed. It just needs to be in a space where you have everything you need for the project kind of easily at hand, easy to set up so that you can instantly hit the ground. Because to succeed at projects, quite often it is going to be moments where, especially if you're really busy, you know, maybe you'll have 10 minutes today to do it. And you need to have a setup where you enable yourself to get those 10 minutes on your project, not on anything else.
What do you suggest in getting everybody on board with this so that they're not, interrupting your creative time or not respecting, the time that you've dedicated to that?
In my life, exercise is a non-negotiable. And I've made it clear, like, that's important for me to the people around me, that like I need this set amount of time every day to do this exercise because it's for my health, right? It's the same with projects, especially for school, right? You need to surround yourself with people who will understand your priorities, and setting boundaries and expectations is so important in relationships. And if you have friends or people in your life who don't respect boundaries, this doesn't mean it's a non negotiation, right? Like if you're placing a boundary, you can also make it reciprocal, right? Where it's like you're also in turn respecting, the boundaries and the needs of the people in your life. But I will say, like, when I was in college, I worked on a comic called Numb that got like a big award at the time. But it wouldn't have gotten done if I didn't establish boundaries with the friends of mine in my life at that time. I will tell you, when you start your project, you're going to notice this. It's called Resistance in that book, The War of Art, but you're going to notice resistance rear its ugly head. Everyone you know is suddenly going to have a birthday party, or they're going to want to go out and hang out or go to a movie or do something really fun. And quite often it's going to be things that are really enticing, that are going to be pulling you 50 ways for your attention, to make the time and make it clear to the people who are close to you, like, hey, on Tuesdays at this time, this is where I have to work on this, no question. And again, forgive yourself and forgive other people if every once in a while, you need to kind of adjust, right? Again, like, if a funeral happens, may not be acceptable for you to be like, this is my writing time. It's like, there are times, but it should be important and urgent enough to where it would have to be something serious, like a funeral, to interrupt that sacred time, right? Make it sacred, make it important. Corey and I have done this. It's very helpful to kind of start setting routines and schedules, and also give you a support system for projects. Not everyone in your life is trying to do something ambitious or different. And if they are doing something ambitious or different, not always are they going to be doing something that's as risky as a creative endeavor. Maybe they're doing side hustles to make money. But in general, like, the creative endeavor is pretty trying. It's going to test you in ways you don't expect. And so there's a couple things. One is, by being public, you remove the excuse and you start holding yourself to the standard of being true to what you say. When you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And by publicly saying you're going to do something, then you have public accountability if you don't. That's a little scary, but that's a good fear. Like, fear sometimes can be good. So that can put the fire under you to actually deliver. Second, you can get kind of down on yourself when you're in the middle of these projects sometimes, and start losing the plot of what you were doing in the first place. And having that public sharing is going to help with encouragement as well. And also feedback. Like, maybe something in your project sucks and somebody lets you know that in a kind way. And now you know, because you were publicly sharing it. So there's a couple prongs to publicly sharing. But then the accountability thing is huge. Like, have people in your life who will hold you accountable. If you don't know other creatives, just tell somebody close to you, hey, I want to do this thing. Bug me about it. Maybe make a schedule with them. Like, hey, every Friday at 9:30, can we have a call where you bug me about this? And make it enticing for your friends. Like, you can give me a hard time. Like, you can prank me if I don't do this. You can gamify it. But the point is, just, you're kind of trying to trick yourself into doing something hard. It's kind of like conditioning for a marathon, right? And you need cheerleaders, and you also need coaches, and you also need teammates. It's going to be helpful to have all three. If you have all three in one, great. Now, are they necessary? No, you could make art in a cave on a desert island. That's fine. In general, for like most normal people, I think we respond well with the sharing. And also, again, you need people to hold you to what you say, and you need to hold yourself to what you say.
I do think there are certain types of neurodivergence that have like a hyperfixation facet to them. What would you recommend as far as a balance, so that you don't destroy the relationships in your life, or drop out of school, or lose your job? How do you kind of continue to do all these things in a healthy way?
Yeah, it's always going to be a struggle. Honestly, that balance is going to be a struggle for your whole life, right? But it really helps if you make a list for yourself of what your highest priorities are. So for me, it's like God, right? It's my wife, and then it's my family, and then after that, friends and stuff like that. Now, that isn't priority like value, right? I'm not making a value statement. Those people are not inherently more valuable than anyone else. It's just, that's my list of what I have to make time for non-negotiably. And it's important to kind of make a list like that. And art should, in my opinion, never be the top. Projects should never be number one above humans, and especially interpersonal relationships. So again, like, you can prioritize it and make those people who are maybe at the top of the list know that this is important and it's high up there, but never should it outweigh your need to like eat, your need to sleep, right? Well, honestly, you're in college, so might cut into your sleep a little bit, which is good. Um, a little bit, not too much. The immediate needs of your life or your family, or, if you're married, a significant other, those are really important things. And those are like the kind of things that on your deathbed, like, you could have written a million books and you're going to be like, I wish I had spent more time with my wife or with my kid. Keep it in context of, while you have to psych yourself out to think that it is the most important thing in the world, don't actually convince yourself that it is. Um, like, you need to treat it urgently, but if your kidney's gonna go out, like, you need to go to the doctor, not work on your project. I think there's a unique thing about most creatives uh, that have projects to show. You're gonna notice across the board, and that is that specific magic bullet of doing the thing regardless, like just finishing the thing, whatever it is. And I think the art of finishing is art. There's a lot of people who feel like artists or talk like they're artists or talk like they're creatives. There's a lot of talk, but there's not a lot of people who actually practice what they preach. And I'd encourage you to be a finisher. There's no magic. There's no like dark secret room that I've found that like will let you in the industry and they're like, congrats, buddy, you've finally made it. But what there is like a through line of people who start and finish projects and push themselves. Be a maker. Why should you be a maker? To me, it's a much more interesting and philosophical way to live your life rather than kind of just consuming. Make more than you consume, and don't be, like a boring corporate shill who's just eating things that somebody else made.
Do you think that creativity is divine? And why do you think human beings specifically feel this draw to go make things?
Well, I think we're made in the image of God. So I think that inevitably we mimic our creator by creating. And so I do think the act of creativity is something important. The exploration of art and beauty and creativity is accessing something that is intangible. And I think that intangible is like getting close to the heavens or getting close to God or getting close to the sorrows of the world. Like all these kind of abstract, more philosophical ideas that are harder to kind of pin down in a rote learning sort of context are the whole purpose of art. And so I definitely think that we're trying to touch the intangible and we're trying to kind of mimic like God's beauty and the story, like telling stories in general. The story of humanity is writing stories, sometimes with no cause or reason. And I think that's the underlying reason is we're kind of mimicking the great storyteller, which to me makes art kind of more important than commerce. Like I think in a commercial sense, art is usually broken down into, you're making stuff to be consumed, and in that kind of scenario where it's like just, trading in the marketplace, I think art will very quickly lose any meaning for anybody who's making it for those reasons. Because we have like the inception of AI, the inception of a lot of things that are going to do this for you anyway. So why are we doing this thing, this expression? Why do we create songs with guitars that are played terribly but sound amazing? Why do they sound amazing, right? Like, what are we touching on with music where you hear it and your heart aches, right? Or you read something and you feel that kind of pull. This is going to be really pretentious and weird, but I think that art creation and creativity can be an act of worship as well. So I think that's a huge thing where the faith that beauty is important, or the faith that philosophical ideas are important, like, as much as like some piece of paper that people are like trading around and saying has value, right? Or some piece of rock that people found in it like underground and are like, this thing's worth something. Like those things are like trash. At the end of the day, I think ideas and philosophies and beauty and love and like the things of art uh, outlast any material things. And so we're trying to kind of touch on the immaterial in a more kind of heady way. And I think if you're doing it the right way, hopefully you are trying to touch on something immaterial, even if it's just humor. I think art is very important, is very reflective of our creator, and it's where we talk about the value of relationships with God. Like if you're talking just in a material sense, you're not going to have much of a discussion about a relationship with God. Start talking about the immaterial. Art's domain is the immaterial. I hope your projects go well out there. So